Hi, Dale Titus here with Dana B. Goods. Today's 2-minute bass lesson, I'm going to respond to some, actually many emails I received about intervals. In previous videos I've talked about like the intervals found within a scale or intervals of arpeggio, even on slap grooves I might mention an interval. And rightly so, some people email me saying, hey, I don't know what intervals are, can you walk me through them? And absolutely, I should have done it at the beginning. So we're going to talk about all the different intervals that you can find. I'm going to go kind of quickly. Now to make it easier, I'm going to start on C and just show you them within one octave. But remember, intervals, what are intervals? Intervals is basically a distance. We take a point, in this case we're going to deal with root, and I'm going to show you a distance from that root, which we call intervals. So obviously root is just the name of the scale or the chord, the root name, the tonic they call it. So like if we were C major, the root is C. If we're doing D minor, the root would be D. It makes sense. So the root is going to be our reference point. Now I'll start with the intervals found in a major scale. So we have a root and then we have a major second. Now there's no real secret. These names derive from the scale step. So you know, if you have a second note of a major second, we call it the major second. Then we have a major third, and that's this shape here. Then we have a perfect fourth. Now the perfect fourth is always, if your root is say the 3rd fret on the A string, the perfect fourth is the 3rd fret on the string next higher in pitch. So in this case it'd be the F on the D string. So that's a perfect fourth. It's the Here Comes the Bride interval. You know, like that. The perfect fifth, which most bass players are comfortable with, is the 5th note of the major scale. And a lot of core bass lines can be made up with the root and the 5. Or if you're walking into in jazz, so perfect fifth. The major 6. Now one cool way to find the major 6 is you can play a major third, which is that little short diagonal, in this case 3rd fret, 2nd fret. 3rd fret on the A string, 2nd fret on the D string. And then just move to the next string higher, the G string. And that's the major 6. The major 7. There's a couple ways to find the major 7 if you're just starting. You can walk up the major scale and say each note, you know, the number of each note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Or you can go up to the octave, which is, you know, in this case C, the high C on the 5th fret, and go back 1 fret. Because the major 7 is always a half step below the octave, or the root really. So those are the intervals found in a major scale. Root, major 2nd, major 3rd, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, major 6th, major 7th, and octave. But what are some of the other intervals that you can find? Well, if we deal with the natural minor scale, you have the root, then you have the major 2nd, you have a minor 3rd. Now I prefer to play, most times, the minor 3rd on the same string as the root, because it fits really nicely in the hands. But occasionally with improvising, you can also find the minor 3rd here. And let's talk about going from major to minor. Here's a major 3rd interval. Now if I take that major 3rd interval and I lower it a half step, it becomes the minor 3rd. And that's true with pretty much all major intervals. If you take a major 7, drop it down, it's a minor 7. If you take a major 2nd, drop it down a half step, it becomes a minor 2nd. When you move a major interval down 1 half step, it becomes minor. When you take a minor interval and move it up 1 half step, it becomes major. Makes sense. So here's a minor 3rd. The minor 6th, if you take a natural minor scale and count up 6 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you get the minor 6. Same thing can be said about the minor 6. Here's a major 6. Now if I take the major 6 interval and drop it a half step, you get minor 6. Now, you know, it's a lot of times easier within the scale to play with this fingering, but that's completely valid too. Minor 7. Well, remember what we talked about the major 7. The major 7 is a half step below the octave. Well, if you take a major 7 interval, drop it a half step, it becomes minor 7. So these are all distances that if you want to have a discussion with somebody or you're trying to teach them a riff and you can say, well, it's root to the octave to a minor 7, they would know, well, if the root C, go up to the octave to the minor 7. Now there's some altered intervals that I haven't discussed yet, and we'll go through those now. A half step up from the root is the minor 2nd. So again, we have a major 2nd, drop the major interval a half step, it becomes minor, and that's really just a half step from the root. So that's easy, a minor 2nd. Then we want to deal with what happens with perfect intervals. So let's take our friend the perfect 4th. If we move move a perfect interval up a half step, it becomes augmented. So we get this augmented fourth. Now if we take a perfect interval, in this case like the perfect fifth, and we drop it a half step, it becomes a diminished fifth. So perfect interval, you raise it a half step, it becomes augmented. You drop it a half step in pitch and becomes diminished. But did you see what happened there? A perfect fourth interval and augmented fourth interval and a diminished fifth interval, same interval. It's the same distance. It's called an enharmonic equivalent. An enharmonic equivalent is a fancy word for a note having two theoretical names or more. And so in this case, the augmented fourth, so we take an augmented fourth, or a perfect fourth, move it up a half step, becomes augmented, or we take a perfect fifth, move it down a half step, becomes diminished. In that case, it's the same pitch, just has two names. Most commonly, you're going to see it referred to as a diminished fifth. And then that I believe covers all the intervals. I know I went really fast because I'm trying to keep it within our shorter time frame. But pause the video and see if you can find them all on your own. Intervals are good to know, so when we start covering more advanced scales, arpeggios, maybe if we do a thing on walking bass lines, it's good to be able to identify every note as it relates to the root, so you can assimilate it, transpose it easier. It's really like learning the language of music, which if you're going to be a musician only makes sense. So again, I apologize if I went quick, but there's a lot of things I was trying to squeeze in here. If you have any questions or you want me to focus on just an element of the intervals, please just email me at dalet@danabygoods.com. Thanks a lot.